Through the first part of Season 5, Class 1B has finally been in the spotlight for the first time since the UA Sports Festival. It's been a lot of fun to see them face off against 1A, and to get to know them more. Some of them only appeared in the background during the Sports Festival, so now that we have more information about them and their quirks, I thought it would be fun to do a ranking, taking into account all the new details. Who are the strongest in 1B? This is going to be a top 10, so I'm not including all the class members. But be sure to let me know in the comments if you think anyone else deserves to be on the list. There are going to be spoilers for the most recent few episodes of My Hero Academia here, so if you haven't seen them, go watch them. What are you waiting for? Alright, let's get started. At the bottom, we have Shishida and his quirk, Beast. Much like his X-Men counterpart, Shishida looks like a furry monster, but has a mild and intelligent personality. His beast form is very physically powerful, so to try and take him on in a fight is intimidating. He even says that the only one who can stand up to his power is Kirishima, which gives you an idea of just how strong he is. Shishida also uses his quirk intelligently, like deactivating it to get between two opponents, then reactivating it once he's clear. But I think this quirk is pretty limited in how it can be used, with the main drawback being that he becomes reckless in his beast form. Kosei Subaraba uses his quirk, Solid Air, to manipulate the field for an advantage in his movement. All he has to do is breathe out, then use that air to create a solid sheet like glass. I think this is probably one of the cooler quirks in the class, since it's only limited by the amount he can hold in his lungs. I imagine it must encourage him to stay healthy and keep improving his lung capacity. It's now even more durable than when we first saw this quirk in the Sports Festival, as it was shattered pretty easily back then. And now it can provide protection against sound-based attacks like Koda's quirk or Shinzo's quirk, making it even more valuable. I placed it pretty low down just because to me, it seems like more of a tactical or supportive quirk, but overall, I think it's great. Juzo Honenuki and his quirk Softening are kind of similar to Subaraba. Juzo is more mature in his personality, but Softening is another ability that manipulates the terrain of the battlefield. However, this quirk also allows him to swim through the ground, which is an added bonus, since it means he can escape or sneak up if he needs to. Juzo is praised for being a flexible thinker, which makes sense given how making things flexible is his strength. Impressively, he gave Todoroki a run for his money during the joint trading, and has shown that he knows when to retreat. Considering his quirk, I don't think he's necessarily suited to close combat, but is instead a very powerful support. I'm gonna butcher this guy's name, so I'm not even gonna bother saying it. I'm not very good at pronunciations, we all know this. But this guy is an interesting character, and I'm glad we got to know him through this arc. His quirk, Black, is an unusual one, since it allows him to blend in the shadows and black-colored items. This gives him the advantage in a shadowy place because he can move freely and disguise himself. It's such an uncommon ability as opposed to being physically strong or creating items, so it gives him a tactical advantage over opponents who aren't expecting what he can do. He's also one of the fastest in the class, but has the disadvantage against those who know his quirk, since he's not much of a fighter. Number 6 is Manga Fukudashi, with his quirk, Comic. I've spoken about him recently in my video about the weirdest quirks, so make sure to go and check that out for more details. Overall though, I think Comic is a very versatile ability that can be used in unexpected ways. It's limited only by manga's vocabulary, and it can be changed depending on what he needs to do. So he can create barriers to defend himself and his allies. He can make obstacles that change the terrain by making it bouncy, or darker, or windy. With the right words, he can perform powerful attacks, or give his allies a boost. I don't think we've seen enough of manga to know the full extent of what his quirk can do, but he seems to have a great understanding of his own ability. However, the disadvantage is that it's a gimmicky quirk, so like many others on this list, it's pretty limited, and not as well suited to a physical fight. Starting our top 5, I think Setsuna Tokage has the potential to be an incredibly powerful hero in the future. Her quirk is Lizard Tail Splitter, which means she can split her body into small portions, that she can then control independently. It's another flexible quirk, and we see her using it to confuse Jiro's scouting and to move around quickly. She's a confident leader, and her team appears to believe in her strategies without question. However, regenerating her body is tiring, and she can't keep her split parts moving forever, which is a definite disadvantage that she has to be clever to avoid. She's also not great at improvising. When Bakugo didn't act the way she expected, she was totally stuck. If she can learn from that mistake, I believe she could one day be a world-class hero. At number 4, Sen Kaibara is the only second on the list to be best suited to hand-to-hand combat. His quirk, Gyrate, gives him the ability to turn a part of his body into a drill, which is actually a scary thing to face off against. Along with his normal fighting abilities, Gyrate means he can get in close and then pretty much just rip you to shreds with the drill. You have to be careful with power tools. They can give you horrifying injuries. So I can only imagine how painful it must be to get attacked by this guy. He's also smart with how he uses it, like when he rotated his body to try throwing off Iida's balance. I think he's going to grow into a very reliable pro hero. Itsuka Kendo is a very likable character, with a cool head and friendly personality. Her leadership abilities are comparable to Momo of Class 1A, since she's a mature and tactical thinker. Her quirk, Big Fist, is physically strong, and she comes up with lots of ways to use it. Besides the obvious, she can use it to block attacks, to help with rescues, to buff her own power through momentum, and she even used her Big Fist to protect the others from the poison gas during the forest training camp. The fact she managed to hold her own against Momo during the joint training is enough to convince me that she deserves a high place on this list. I think she's a great character, and I hope we get to see more of her later on in the story. In my opinion, Tetsu Tetsu is one of the most impressive characters in the school, not just in Class 1B. As viewers, we're often encouraged to compare him to Kirishima, since their quirks are so similar. But this season, it's his fight against Todoroki where he's really allowed to shine. It's made clear that his determination to become stronger is unmatched. He literally sat in a furnace so that he could increase his resistance to fire. What makes this truly impressive is that his steel skin could melt at such high temperatures, so he's very much risking his life and forcing Todoroki to put out such powerful flames. Along with his physical strength, it's his determination and fighting spirit that earns him second place in my top 10. Although he's reckless at times, going head-on into fights, he's obviously maturing, and his attitude towards his training is a great example for his classmates. I wanted to throw in an honorable mention here, being Kineko Komori. Her quirk, Mushroom, is a lot of fun, but it's also terrifying that she can kill you by forcing mushrooms to grow in certain parts of your body. It's such an unusual and uncomfortable way to die, so I'm glad she's on the side of the heroes. My top spot is a bit of a wild card, and I'm sure some of you will disagree with me here, but first place goes to Monoma. In my opinion, his quirk, Copy, is one of the most versatile and useful in the series. I would put it on level with Momo's creation, with how much it can do. Monoma can store copies of other people's quirks, almost like a time-limited one for all. He's limited in what exactly he can copy, since it needs to be something his own body can handle, but he obviously has an excellent understanding of what he's capable of. The nature of his quirk means that he has to be a sharp thinker, strategizing well and planning ahead. He's shown that he can not only do this, but that he also thinks ahead in terms of fooling his enemy. Like the fact he only has 3 watches to try and catch his opponent off guard with the 4th stored quirk. Even though he comes across as an immature narcissist, it's details like this that prove what an intelligent fighter he actually is. I think that as viewers, we underestimate what a powerful quirk Copy is when it's used well. Storing other quirks and using them at will, especially when your enemy doesn't know about it, is such a ridiculous advantage to have. This point, along with how crafty Monoma can be when using it, is why he places at number 1. So, that wraps up my top 10 strongest students from Class 1B. As always, these are just my opinions, and I know any kind of power ranking is pretty subjective. Let me know what you think of my list, and if there's anything you would change. Maybe you can change my mind. Thanks for watching, and as always, be sure to stick around for more anime content soon.